The UN is warning of a cataclysmic situation in Haiti where 1.4 million people are, quote, a step away from famine.
A gangland rebellion is ripping through the republic.
All we know is we are on the run. Our houses have been burnt down, and we're not living. There's no life. We're in misery.
It's a siege from within, and everyone is a prisoner.
Welcome to On Strike, a production of Workers Strike Back. I'm Bia Lacombe.
And I'm Emily MacArthur. Haiti, a small island nation in the Caribbean Sea and home to over 11 million people, has become engulfed in an unprecedented crisis of deadly gang violence over the last several weeks. Political gangs vying for control of the capital city, Port-au-Prince, have effectively laid siege to the city, storming prisons, seizing control of the port, torching shops and buildings, destroying hospitals, and taking over the main international airport. The United Nations estimates that 80% of Port-au-Prince is now under gang control, pointing towards a veritable collapse of society.
It's hard to believe, but this is downtown Port-au-Prince, the heart of Haiti's capital. It should be full of people. It isn't now. Fighting is often intense here. Burnt out cars and buildings abandoned, the signature of the violence in this city.
This epidemic of gang violence and the untenable situation facing millions of working class and poor Haitians today is the culmination of a cycle of crises that began several years ago, which is the result of decades of political instability, poverty, and chaos engendered by U.S. imperialism and other Western capitalist powers, exploiting millions of ordinary people and natural resources in Haiti for profit. The United Nations estimates that over 300,000 Haitians have been forced to flee their homes. Thousands have become victims of indiscriminate violence at the hands of armed gangs. Over 1,500 people have been killed since just the start of this year, and morgues have been overflowing with bodies. Hospitals are flooded with countless patients with gunshot wounds, many of them civilians, hit in gang crossfire.
I don't know where the bullet came from. I just got shot. I lost everything and I can't get home.
Harrowing reports of kidnappings, gang rapes, and homes being burned add to the picture of a nation in the throes of a deep-rooted crisis. The hashtag prison break has become synonymous with the crisis, as over 80% of prison inmates have escaped, and the security situation remains precarious for the majority of working class and poor people in the capital. Rural areas are now beginning to be affected as well. Additionally, the Haitian police force is in turmoil, with officers protesting against their chief, accusing him of collusion with gangs responsible for the prison break.
The unelected interim Haitian Prime Minister Ariel Henry was recently forced to step down under pressure from the gang alliance headed by notorious Special Forces police officer turned gang kingpin Jimmy Barbecue Cherizier. To help us understand the roots and historical context of this crisis, why it should matter to American working and young people, how it relates to the other crises internationally under capitalism, and what strategy is needed to end the crisis in Haiti, we have two very special guests today. Toya Chester is a rank-and-file member of the International Brotherhood of Electrical Workers. Eric Jenkins is an educator in the Philadelphia Public School District and is a member of the Philadelphia Federation of Teachers. Both Eric and Toya are among the leaders of the Black Caucus of Socialist Alternative. If you've watched On Strike before, you'll know that we provide an analysis from the point of view of working class people about the problems we face in our daily lives under capitalism. In every episode, On Strike also presents a strategy for working class movements to fight back. We talk about why it's crucial that every fight for change emphasizes the need to build working class solidarity and is linked with organizing a powerful challenge to the political establishment and the capitalist system itself. This is something you won't find on mainstream media, and that's why we need your support for On Strike. Subscribe to our channel on YouTube and become a member of Workers Strike Back to help ensure we can continue to organize to rebuild a fighting labor movement. By becoming a Workers Strike Back member, you can also help this broadcast. We don't run any ads, we don't accept any corporate money, and we rely entirely on donations from working people.
We don't have a crystal ball. We are not in the business of predicting where struggle will break out. But wherever the struggle of the rank and file under capitalism breaks out, we need to be there. We need to help them get organized. So no matter what political issue inspires you or excites you, Workers Strike Back is for you.
Go to workersstrikeback.org and click on Become a Member. Welcome, Toya and Eric.
Glad to be here. Thanks for having us.
So Toya, can you first tell us more about what's happened over the last month and a half in Haiti and what's been the response of the Biden administration and US imperialism?
Yeah, Bia, it's absolutely devastating. What's been unfolding over the last month and a half is now the worst humanitarian crisis since the 2010 earthquake, which killed 300,000 people. There's chaos, there's instability, and threat to life of just, ordinary people, especially in the capital, Port-au-Prince. There's gun battles between rival gangs, between gangs and the police. People are getting hit by stray bullets. And it's paralyzed the working class and poor people, with most of them unable to safely go to work for other basic tasks like taking their children to school or going to buy groceries if there are even groceries on the shelf. And 1,500 people have been killed already this year and many more injured. There's tens of thousands that have been forced to flee the capital in just a matter of weeks. And the total number of displaced people in Haiti right now is close to 400,000. Half of them being children, considering, more than half the population in Haiti is young people. And Haiti is a country that depends on food imports for half of its food supply. And since January, food prices have jumped from 25 to 30%. And there is also a scarcity of propane, which is how people cook their food. And according to the World Food Program, which is, an agency of the United Nations, 4 million people in Haiti face what's called acute food insecurity. And 1 million of those people are one step away from an actual famine. I mean, it's insane. This has only exacerbated the hunger and food insecurity that millions of Haitian poor and working class families were already facing since the COVID pandemic. And so right now, the Biden administration is talking about a $33 million humanitarian aid package for Haiti with other Western countries. Obviously, the people in Haiti are in urgent need of this assistance in food and, establishing security and, things like that. And just like what we're seeing with the situation in Israel and Gaza, there are so many reasons. It's an absolute hypocrisy for US imperialism and the Biden administration to pose as some sort of protectors of, the Haitian people. And for this reason, Haitians are very wary of any intervention coming from the US or, other countries. Many people may remember in 2021, the Customs and Border Patrol agents on horseback that were attacking Haitian refugees in Texas. I remember seeing these disgusting images of it on social media. It was just so reminiscent of the hundreds of years of anti-Black racism we've experienced in this country with, Border Patrol agents literally on horsebacks holding these big whips, where you have desperate refugees just trying to get to safety, get a better life. And, these Border Patrol agents are yelling racist slurs at them. And let's not forget that all of this happened under Biden. When he ran for president, he made promises about making the border more humane after the horrors of the Trump administration. But the facts speak for themselves, including the continuation of Trump's, anti-immigrant policies and Biden's increasingly anti-immigrant rhetoric. But then, going back to Haiti, we have the question there of arms that these gangs are using. There are no gun nor ammunition factories in Haiti itself. But the reality is when Haitian gangsters go shopping, they go to the United States gun store. And this is the same kind of semi-automatic American, rifles that have been used in countless mass shootings that we've seen, whether it's an elementary school or a bowling alley. And most importantly, Biden and US imperialism's hypocrisy comes through from the fact that the extreme poverty and exploitation, the social breakdown, the gangsterism, the violence, the destruction, of the destruction of infrastructure, all of this is rooted in more than a century of brutal imperialist policies from the US. Gangsterism has grown as Haiti has seen succession of presidents who have headed up what have essentially been puppet regimes for the US and Western corporations and billionaires. And we've seen this all over the world, particularly in Latin America. in the Caribbean. And these regimes' main purpose has not been to improve the lives of Haitian people, but instead to ensure that the, Haitian exports of raw materials, agricultural products, textiles, things like this that are produced on the backs of terribly exploited Haitian workers, continue to the United States, to Canada, and to other industrialized nations. And this has even been true for this interim acting president, Ariel Henry. And he was recently forced to resign by the gangs, but also for his predecessor, Moise, who was assassinated last year, which resulted in this power vacuum between rival political cliques in the country. And so both of these men acted on behalf of the wealthy interests and broken promises for democratic elections after they took power. I mean, this discussion definitely should go into some more of that history, because otherwise it's not really possible to fully understand the situation that we're seeing today in Haiti.
Yeah, thanks for kicking us off on that, Toya. I think there's just a lot of history to look into there. You mentioned that Haiti is dependent on importing over 50% of its food, and that's no accident, right? There's a large history of Haiti being incredibly fertile, totally able to produce crops, and in fact, you mentioned one of their main exports being agriculture. So they're producing basically like luxury items to be exported to the world, but then not permitted to feed their own population, which again is a story that we've heard through U.S. imperialism, especially over and over again. But, the majority of On Strike's audience is based in the United States. Eric, can you explain why American working and young people watching this should be concerned about what's happening in Haiti and, moreover, understand what strategy the Haitian and international working class can use to fight to end this horrible crisis?
Of course, it is a really tragic situation. First, we have to start with U.S. imperialism. U.S. imperialism is directly responsible for over a century of exploitation and destabilization that brought us here today. And I think we just have to recognize that. There are over 2 million Haitian Americans currently residing in the United States who are also deeply connected to what's happening in their home, where they often have family members telling them what is happening, often trying to find their support. But of course, the brutal conditions lead to displacement, forcing desperate people to flee to the United States. There's a long history, very long history, of discrimination against Haitian immigrants to the United States. Aside from the shocking attacks by Border Patrol agents that Toya mentioned, the Biden administration has carried out mass deportation of Haitian refugees. These refugees are desperately fleeing poverty and exploitation in their home country, like any refugee anywhere in the world in this system. This is on top of catastrophic events like massive earthquakes. Haitian refugees who are not deported are forced into squalid conditions once they arrive. Refugees are forced to camp in the open air without adequate shelter, plumbing, or access to food and clean water. And I think it's important for young people in the United States who have been appalled at how the Biden administration has broken its promises on the issue of immigration, the so-called promise of no more kids in cages. Many working and young people have correctly been saying that they reject Biden and Trump. Over 500,000 have voted uncommitted in the Democratic primaries, showing their anger at Biden's support for an absolute brutal war on Gaza and their refusal to support either Trump or Biden, which is really important. We need to understand international situations, such as facing Haitian immigrants and refugees, reveals even more why it's crucial that we do not accept lesser evilism as an argument. And as On Strike said in your recent episode, that working and young people should reject Biden and Trump in November, vote for Cornel West or Jill Stein as a left anti-war candidate as a step towards building a new party for working people. There's another reason why it's important that as working people, we have an international analysis. Take the example of Chicago, which you have covered in one of your recent episodes, which talks about why more and more Black people are rejecting Biden. Your guest, Ryan Watson, who's also a member of Social Alternatives Black Caucus like Toya and me, made the point that both Democrats and Republicans are responsible for massive budget cuts in city after city, and working people are forced to live with grossly inadequate social services, lack of quality affordable housing, criminally, and I say this with personal experience, criminally underfunded public schools, and crumbling infrastructure. Meanwhile, billionaires are wealthier now since before the pandemic, and establishment politicians refuse to even push for minimal policies to tax the rich to fund the needs of working and poor people. In this context, these same politicians are then able to use a divide and conquer message to make working people in American cities hostile to incoming immigrants. I think it's incredibly important that we push back against this divisive rhetoric, refuse to be pitted against one another, and recognize that we as American working people have much more in common with working people in Haiti and in Mexico and every other nation than we do with billionaires and corporate politicians in our own country. And we need international fight back to win policies that can harness society's wealth to fulfill the needs of all working people, regardless of nationality and ethnicity, not for the endless greed of the rich. It's pretty simple. It's important to also look at the miserable conditions the masses in Haiti have been subjected to in a series of catastrophes, from earthquakes to the COVID pandemic to climate-linked disasters. What is happening in Haiti is a window into the future of capitalism, where the social fabric can and will break down as the wide-ranging global impacts of this failed system add up, from environmental crisis to war. This will especially occur in neocolonial and less developed nations, as more natural disasters happen virtually everywhere due to the environmental crisis, and the burden of these crises primarily falls on working and poor people, who would have guessed, in these nations where they hit far harder because of the impacts of imperialism. The realities of climate change require that the working class build internationally coordinated mass movements.
Thanks, Eric. I think you're totally right. And I think that, speaking of refusing to be pitted against one another and the interests that working people have, across borders, sort of an interesting fact is that, the city of Chicago was actually founded by a Black Haitian. So you mentioned Chicago, and I think ultimately, though, your points about the need for united mass movements and for international fight back are really needed right now to respond to these crises all over the world. But I think it's really important that our viewers understand what the rise of gangsterism in Haiti represents, how it's ultimately rooted in the brutal policies of U.S. imperialism in Haiti and the region, and how the gangs cynically tap into the genuine anger of ordinary people against those policies. So, for example, Jimmy Barbecue Cherizier, the leader of the most prominent coalition of gangs, regularly uses rhetoric about the rich versus poor divide.
An nou nou gade gen den Haiti. On Haitien haut, on Haitien bas. Moun sa ki ben nou nan esclavage, pou nan 10 ans encore, pou nan 20 ans encore, pou se petit pa yo ki ministre, ki directeur général, pour ces petites paroles qui président sénateur, pour ces petites paroles qui grand entrepreneur, nous-mêmes nous ne pouvons jamais gagner. Il est pour nous faire la différence entre gang, bandit, à moun qui fait révolution.
Can you explain how these political gangs have been able to rise to power, what role they're playing, and if their rhetoric about the working class and poor is genuine?
Yes, as you said, Chieze often talks about the divide between rich and poor. It speaks angrily against Western imperialist powers and the system. His alliance of gangs call themselves Visasam, which is a French expression that means everyone living together in harmony, which conveys a beautiful image. But underneath it, it exists this bloody reality ordinary people in Haiti are experiencing. It is extremely dangerous to have any illusion in gangsterism and in warlords like Cherizier, who was one in many warlords in Haiti. Last year, nearly 5,000 Haitians were killed in gang violence, more than double the number in 2022. Sexual violence against women and young girls has been occurring with widespread impunity. Cherizier himself is a former Haitian police officer who indiscriminately attacked Haitian protesters and working class communities, where multiple women proudly and bravely told their stories of sexual assault committed by the gangs under the control of Cherizier. There is a militant anger that the Haitian youth hold toward the political elites who have plundered and exploited their communities, and forces like Cherizier to adopt a populist rhetoric. Murals of Che Guevara adorn the walls of the neighborhoods under his control, which is wild to think that. But working and poor people should be under no illusion. Jersey and the other gang leaders are not Che Guevaras. They are not revolutionaries, and they are no friends of the oppressed.
Yeah, I agree with you, Eric. And, working people in Haiti and other underdeveloped nations also cannot afford to have any faith in these sort of institutions of global capitalism, neither US and Western imperialism, nor their own lackeys like Ariel Henry and the political and ruling elite in the neo-colonial world. These gangster leaders represent the complete breakdown of society that has occurred again and again in neocolonial nations under global capitalism. For example, after interim President Henry refused to call elections, the anger of the Haitian masses spilled out into the streets. There were back-to-back protests, including general strikes led by various unions calling for his resignation. And the Haitian state under Henry responded with outright repression, using a mix of police and gangs to violently crack down on these protesters. And so this repression against working people's movements and labor strike actions and the destruction of any remaining faith in the representatives and institutions of capitalism is very much integral to the backdrop of the rise of power of these gangs. And all this goes back even further. Starting in 1957, Haiti was under the control of Francois Duvalier, and then his son Jean-Claude Duvalier, called Papa Doc and Baby Doc, who were installed by US and Western imperialism. Now, these regimes regularly used violent death squads to repress the angry masses of Haiti, who were kept in poverty while enriching international capital and the local elite, a very small local elite. And these death squads, who ultimately had the support of US imperialism, were the precursors of today's gangs. And they really taught them what they knew, and they used them. So they really got their training in that way. The majority of the Haitian population, like I said earlier, is under the age of 25. So it's a very young population. They're faced with almost no other options other than joining the growing mass of the unemployed or working, a dead-end job with no money. And so it's understandable and not surprising that many of them turn towards crime to make a living, because it's either that or starvation at times. And so kidnappings for ransom have become such a common occurrence in the capital for several years now that it's an industry in itself. It's a profitable industry. Already by 2022, there was an average of 2 to 3 kidnappings a day. And Haiti is a deeply impoverished nation with 7 million people living below the poverty line of $2.14. And if that is what the poverty line is, then we know millions more are actually living in poverty, because that level is just ridiculous. And so today's crisis in Haiti was certainly anticipated by, anyone who was observing the nation's politics and economy over the last few years. Already by 2022, in a vast landscape of joblessness and hopelessness, increasing numbers of young people were being wooed into crime and, joining these gangs as alternatives in a system which offered no future to them. So the gangs are weaponizing the genuine anger and discontentment of the masses who have faced untold suffering for decades.
Yeah, thank you both so much. I wanted to pull out a term that I think you both used because I think it's just sort of worth unpacking. When we talk about Haiti being underdeveloped, right, this isn't a judgment of what's possible in Haiti. It's a conscious impact of imperialism, that these economies are not allowed to develop into flourishing, systems that could actually serve the people who live there. So just, to kind of clarify that term. And I think also, in how we understand like what would be a path forward, which of course we'll get into a little bit more, but like what makes these gangs not a vehicle to fight back. They don't have a political program. They don't have the democratic structures that would actually be necessary when we say, that Chevalier is not a revolutionary. That is what's truly revolutionary, right? Pointing to an alternative system and having mass democratic structures.
And I think that's important because there are people out there right now talking about how he is a revolutionary and he is that barbecue is like the way forward for the Haitian people. And yeah, it just doesn't seem that doesn't seem true based on what we actually know about what is revolutionary.
Yeah, and working people need to be able to be like honest about what is equality in a political leader, and I don't think that the violence that Chevalier has put forward is at all an answer. So yeah, to get back to our panelists, I mean, as you were both explaining, the roots of the current crisis, the gangsterism that's running rife, goes back many decades. Toya, can you talk about the role of U.S. and Western imperialism in recent decades, the role of the CIA, multinational corporations, and the super wealthy in developing the situation in Haiti today?
It's almost a copy and paste, like the US and the CIA likes to do this all over the world. But, going to Haiti became this beacon of hope to working and oppressed people of the world in 1804 when there was, basically a slave revolt in Haiti that carried out a revolution, and they won their freedom and independence in the world's first ever successful slave revolt. So it's to this day very inspiring to people. But with an economy directly reliant on that time, on slavery, the US and other Western rulers could never allow, an independent nation of former slaves to succeed. Western imperialism imposed horrific conditions, including France's extraction of, if we were counting in today's money, it would be like $20 to $30 billion from their former slave colony as punishment for their independence. I mean, they were forced to pay the colonizer reparations. Like, that is insane. Literally forcing them to pay for the, quote unquote value their enslavement would have brought to France. And the US took direct colonial control over Haiti, 100 years later, between 1915 and 1932, after which it created a system of US-backed military dictatorships that they endured for decades. And then in 1986, after there were powerful waves of mass revolt, Jean-Claude Duvalier was forced into exile. And the US backers of the dictatorship, they saw what was coming, and they decided to support introducing democracy to Haiti, so long as it would be neoliberal democracy. But instead, U.S. imperialism's plan was ruined, and in 1990, elections were won in a landslide by Jean-Bertrand Aristide, who spoke openly against the colonial powers who had been exploiting Haitians for hundreds of years. So, of course, the U.S. can't have that. The CIA immediately backed a military coup against him, and he was forced to flee while the military killed 5,000 protesters calling for the restoration of democracy. And so he remained in exile from 1991 to 1994. But then popular international pressure forced the U.S. to return Aristide to power while making demands to limit the scale of reform and keep Haiti a capitalist nation, which, is always the goal of the capitalists. And so in the 2000 elections, Aristide's party ran on economic reforms and relief for the poor, and they won handedly once again. And Aristide introduced major reforms that increased taxes on the rich to build public services and raise the minimum wage. But not surprisingly, the global capitalist powers led by the US and Canadian corporations and the state started immediately plotting his overthrow. In 2004, Aristide was removed in a coup d'etat, and neoliberal economist Gerard Latour II flew in from Florida. He was installed to rule over Haiti, proceeded to privatize public services, proceeded to lower the minimum wage, and to cut the taxes on big businesses. In the intervening 2 decades since the 2004 coup, the Haitian government passed between different neoliberal factions, and people have continued to be deeply exploited because of this. And Haiti, as a nation, has been forced by the capitalists IMF to swallow so-called special economic zones, which are literally places where multinational corporations, they get permission and license to pay less than minimum wage to the workers working there. And they avoid, all sorts of other basic labor laws while, they get to celebrate the free market.
I think that was a really helpful overview of, a lot of history. So Toya referenced the history of slavery in Haiti and the really inspiring revolution. I'm wondering, Eric, if there's anything that you could expand on with that and explain why it's relevant to today's crisis. Like, what lessons can the working class learn from the Haitian Revolution to end slavery? Obviously, that's an important enough question that deserves its own episode, but if you can briefly explain.
So yes, there's plenty of brilliant lessons to get from the Haitian Revolution against slavery. And I think an important one is the power of international analysis, and fight back from anywhere can cause a crisis in the system. The Haitian Revolution, it was in the context of the French Revolution. It was a revolutionary period. And these revolutions in French and the United States had all their flaws, but it inspired working people and poor people to fight for a better world. There was something there. And that also spilled over to Haiti, where many Black slaves that were completely tortured in horrific ways, and I cannot even describe the ways because they're that horrific. And also the colored class, and that's, they were colored because they were Black slaves, they were descendant of Black slaves, and the white slave master. They were denied any citizen rights, but they were also educated. And they were able to read these ideas and actually see there's a better world possible. And those ideas were transmitted to the masses of Black slaves. And they fought, going into the swamps and practicing voodoo to prepare themselves into constant warfare with their slave masters, with their oppressors, in extreme of battles. And that involved working and poor people sacrificing. And it was really inspiring because they saw the ideas of the French Revolution in a more pure way than some of the French revolutionary leaders at the time. They understood what liberty, equality, fraternity actually meant an absolute destruction of not just slavery, but of white supremacy. And they were such a threat that Napoleon, you probably watched the recent movie, that dude invaded Haiti. And then he lost. The Haitian people defeated him. One inspiring story is that when the French sent Dutch mercenaries to fight in Haiti, the Dutch mercenaries refused to fight. They actually went over to the side of the Haitians, which is still a massive symbol of international solidarity if there ever was one. And in 1804, 60 years before the United States, they abolished slavery and became the first Black republic. And that scared the living hellites of all the powers at that time, including the United States, that saw what Haiti represented was a source of inspiration of Black people, particularly Black working people here in the United States and Black slaves at that time. And that's the story even today in 2024, that these small nations like Haiti, or anywhere around the world where there's massive exploitation, massive oppression, where the majority are young, that they can actually show the world what is possible and inspire all working people and the oppressed. And I think that's the most crucial lesson that we should get from the Haitian Revolution.
Thank you so much, Eric. And I think just one of the things I found that I actually had never read in a history book before or heard about in my history class was that actually in 1804, as you said, 60 years before the U.S. Did away with slavery through their own sort of revolutionary war, that actually the government of Haiti sponsored bringing over Black slaves to help them escape the atrocities of slavery in the United States, which I think just underscores those points that you were talking about, that internationalism is so important and that a fight back anywhere can really lead to an inspiring further fight back elsewhere. Can you describe some of the efforts at an organized working class fight back, such as with the nurses' strike a few years ago, Toya? And also, how important is it, in your view, to have such a fight back organized around economic and political demands that can unite working people as part of a real strategy to address the deep crisis?
Yeah, Emily, as a union member, the economic demands really are what bring people together. And so the nurses' strike in Haiti in 2022 was in protest to the endemic violence and the epidemic of kidnappings. It was a 3-day strike and included shutting down not just public, but also private health institutions in the capital, Port-au-Prince, and beyond, leaving, of course, emergency rooms only accepting patients. And also that same year, we saw textile and other factory workers in Haiti went on strike demanding higher wages in the midst of soaring inflation. And these poor striking workers were attacked by the police, firing tear gas on them. And so the first thing that needs to happen.
We're protesting peacefully with sticks. The police are abusing us. We do not consider them as police. We consider them as gangs.
And so it is crucial for labor unions to organize rank and file on concrete demands. That is working class action. It's the only solution to build unity among the masses and fight back against both the gangsters and the political elite. International solidarity will be pivotal, though especially from the rank and file in the US labor movement, since the working people of Haiti face obstacles of global capitalism that will not be overcome without international revolutionary movements led by the working class. Just to explain what the Haitian working and poor people face, these are trade policies that are imposed by these international financial agencies, and they've left Haiti dependent on food imports, which we spoke about earlier, particularly from the US. Soaring rice prices and other staples in 2009 hit the Haitian people very hard. And this was before the 2010 earthquake, which devastated the country to an insane degree. Haiti is burdened with $50 million a year in debt servicing. And even after the horrendous damage of the earthquake, when a $100 million IMF emergency loan was granted, it was on the condition of a public sector pay freeze on the top of the debt servicing that it was already built in. These are the brutal realities of capitalism, that these people can't even be helped. They have to get these insane loans that they are unable to pay back.
Yeah, I think all of that is really important, especially the massive exploitation that took place after the earthquake. I think people won't be shocked, but still horrified to learn things about, like Royal Caribbean, which after the earthquake gave $1 million to rebuild all of Haiti, and then turned around to invest $55 million in their private cove, literally called Columbus Bay. So just like totally cynical, all these corporations pretending to give the kind of necessary aid, but are really just looking to exploit the natural beauty and resources in Haiti. But also I think, surprising to no one will be the fact that Bill Clinton played a major role in why Haitians are so dependent on rice exports, where he forced Haiti to lower the tariffs on U.S. U.S. and I think other countries' rice imports to Haiti. And so then the price went down, and it was way cheaper to import rice than to grow it and eat it there. And so that's spiraled into this whole crisis where then, after COVID and the earthquake, it was extremely expensive to buy things like rice and things that they were forced to import. But I think we're getting to the point of, what are the solutions here? And Toya's talking about working class solutions being the only way forward. So I'm wondering, Eric, what you think, if you think there are any electoral solutions to this crisis. I think, things that have been proposed so far by the political and ruling elite is a proposed presidential college, and there's a multinational force led by the Kenyan government that's, going to be intervening at some point. And earlier this week, a deal was put forward for a temporary government to try to steer the nation out of its gang-fueled chaos. What do Haitian working and poor people think about this type of deal? And what do you think Haitians should do coming out of the most immediate crisis of this gang warfare?
Yeah, I think, before we talk about solutions, it's important to stress, how dire the situation is. It is very desperate for the average Haitian in Haiti, which is working and poor people. And there's an urgent need to bring the relentless gang warfare to stop. Any respite from the violence is needed. But the last 30 years of Haiti has shown that any temporary stability, even if such a thing is possible, it can be achieved, will be extremely tenuous. Any election of government will be on the same old basis of continuing to exploit the masses for the profit and greed of global capitalism, big business, and the local elite. It fuels the problem in and of itself. Working and oppressed people cannot rely on these capitalist interests or the police apparatus to solve the problems, because these institutions are the problem. Working people have to get independently organized. strike actions by unions, concrete demands opposing the plundering of resources by multinational corporations, demanding workplace rights, such as a living wage. Another key tool to address ongoing violence can be democratically organized communities of self-defense by ordinary working people and the poor to protect themselves from gang violence. So that's already happening to some extent, but it has to be democratically organized, bringing in the entire working class and poor, particularly the unions, to have real strength. These have been used a number of times historically by working class people to protect themselves from reactionary forces and state violence.
Yeah, thanks for laying that out, Eric. And in your response, you already pointed to this idea, but I think we just have to say it outright. Is there any solution on the basis of capitalism to the repeated and compounding crises in Haiti? And not just Haiti, but so many nations in Latin America, Asia, and Africa. As members of Socialist Alternative's Black Caucus, can you both explain the need for socialist politics and socialist revolution to end the brutal exploitation of capitalism and imperialism?
Ultimately, the roots of such stunning crises as the one unfolding in Haiti lie in global capitalism, imperialism, and class society itself. The situation faced by countries like Haiti has everything to do with the plundering of the region by early European colonizers, from the French, from the British, from the United States, etc., during the inception of global capitalism. And these conditions will continue persisting and will also worsen because of their utter inability of the global capitalist system to provide any solutions, any at all. The system will continue turning millions, tens of millions, into refugees through war, political instability, environmental and climate crisis. We need international solidarity from the labor movement in Western nations. Without a fight for international socialism, the masses in the neocolonial world cannot be liberated.
And just to add to that, we need democratic control over the aid and over the emergency assistance, the rescue, the relief, the rehab of the affected people, and a massive reconstruction programs through elected committees of workers, agricultural laborers, youth, poor people in every area. We need to see the building of high quality, earthquake-proof standard housing, hospitals, schools, infrastructure, and other vital public resources and services. And we don't want to see this in a corrupt way. We've seen that in the past where contracts are given to American companies to do this work, and they either import the workers or they don't do the work at all and just receive the money. We want to make sure that this money is going actually to that rebuilding. We also need to see international solidarity for asylum seekers and refugees. Last year, 250,000 people were deported from the Dominican Republic, which is right next door to Haiti. And asylum seekers should be able to find safe shelter, and they shouldn't be forced to stay where they cannot live. Something that leaders who are anti-immigrant do not acknowledge is people want to stay in their own country. They don't want to leave, but they will do what is needed to be safe. And unfortunately, here in the US, particularly Black and brown communities have been pitted against immigrants and refugees coming into cities. I know in my city, there were actually protests because they took a community center that is very important for the Black community and housed immigrants there. And so we need a way to build these connections of solidarity to make sure that everyone has safe housing. We also need to see the cancellation of all foreign debts and neoliberal trade policies. And we need to help out the struggling small farmers, paying living wages, etc. But ultimately, what this means is bringing the economy into public ownership under a democratic workers' control and management. We also need an end to imperialist meddling, and we need to build independent unions and a new mass party of the working class and poor with socialist policies.
I think that was really excellent. And just to your point, Toya, about communities being pitted against each other for the basic things like affordable housing and having community spaces. We need to tax the wealthy corporations like Royal Caribbean and the billionaires that own them to massively expand affordable housing and do, fight for all these things that you were talking about. But yeah, I think that the concept of having democratic ownership and control over aid and how that's distributed and how things are rebuilt is not really talked about as much when it comes to these kinds of crises. So I think that's a really important point.
Especially in Haiti, where, the legacy is that Baby Doc just put all of that aid just into his personal bank account and then fled with it. So it's just a really pertinent lesson in Haiti.
Yeah, absolutely. But yeah, that brings us to the end of the discussion. Thank you both so much for joining us today. I think this was a really good example of the kind of analysis that this show and our guests bring to viewers that it's really hard to find elsewhere in the media. So please share this video with your friends and coworkers. On Strike is a production of Workers Strike Back, a nationwide organization fighting on working class demands. Find out more at workersstrikeback.org and donate. Look for us on Patreon to support our work. On Strike is a broadcast entirely for working people and funded entirely by working people. Solidarity.